You're listening to Heroes in the Moment.
What's up, heroes? I'm Michael.
And I'm Nathan.
And today we're reviewing Secret Invasion.
The whole season,
the
baby.
The whole season, all 6 episodes.
All in one, baby.
And me and Nathan did this very differently this time. Nathan, I think, binged it, right? Correct? You binged
Dude,
all
I
6
watched
together?
it all in the last 2 days.
Oh, wow. And I watched it week to week. So we have a little bit different perspectives coming in on, the binge worthiness of the show.
I
And then
just
also
watched the last episode. Literally.
That's funny. And then, from the perspective of watching it week to week. So that's going to be interesting to go with it. So just intro right off the bat. I will say I do have some bias because I love the idea of Secret Invasion. I love the plot of the idea of what it was, a Secret Invasion.
What it should be.
And what it should be. And its scale of what, it had to be. And I will say, this show has received a lot of hate from critics. And it's kind of, of course, the finale was received very poorly by most people, and I would agree as well. But the overall show itself, I think it's really not a bad show. I thought it was really good.
I think it was a definition of mid. Like I don't know.
I think it was above mid.
If you look at the numbers, I don't know. Like I said, I don't give much to these ratings, but like all 6 episodes of the show were like the 6 worst rated Marvel show, like episodes in general.
Really weird because
and the finale was the worst of any Marvel show.
Yeah, which when you look at the numbers,
Tomatoes.
though, however, and then you look at the numbers for She-Hulk and Ms. Marvel, they're all high, which immediately invalidates all of those.
I will say, I don't know about invalidate. I will say you got to take it with a grain of salt because, like I said, She-Hulk was rated pretty well, and that was. It's probably still to this day the worst show I've ever watched. It doesn't make sense. They dumped $200 million into this project.
It was.
As far as I know, that's like the most expensive TV show they've made so far.
It has been.
And the action was cool, but they were just that money can't buy you a good plot, essentially. And like you said, like my wife was watching the last episode with me, and the first thing she was like, "Dude, this should have been a movie."
Oh yeah, easily.
the pacing was bad, but. They had what they needed. It
should have been. I
good
completely
performances.
Agree. It should have been a movie. It should have been it should have been similar to what they did in Phase 1 of the Infinity Saga, and like has Loki as the villain of the first Avengers. They should have done it with this, with Super Skrull being the main villain of an Avengers Secret Invasion movie, and had it be like a phase. And then obviously the multiverse saga, lead up to Kang. Obviously still could have done that, just had this phase centered around the whole idea of Secret Invasion.
Yeah.
I completely agree. It should have been bigger in scale.
Should
have had crazier reveals. It should have been like the Avengers should have been involved. All of these different.
And they keep on name dropping them to show they're connected,
Right.
but nothing. It's personal for me. Like,
Right.
dude, stop. World War III is about to happen.
Well, it makes sense to what he was saying in the whole idea of wanting to solve it on his own. I understand that, and also I like their explanation of they didn't want to get the Avengers involved because they don't want them to get infiltrated.
Yeah.
I get that. That makes sense.
They don't want them
I
powers
liked how
taken.
they explained that, but it should have been bigger in scale. Now, what they did with the show, it was not like I enjoyed watching it. I genuinely enjoyed watching it. I think the vibes and the themes, and that was probably one of my favorites from any Marvel Disney Plus show, just because the darkness, those kind of
I did like, it was
great.
darker, but it was just cheapened by the plot and the dialogue, Like I said, it had some really cool scenes, and I enjoyed some of them, but like, man, the pacing from you go from one scene to this scene, like you said, like they weren't able to be super big because it was a show, but they had $200 million. It's like, how are you going to fit all that into 6 episodes?
The pacing was definitely off, and we'll get into that with the pros and cons and explanations of the episodes. But to give it to the series, it's still like compared to the other Marvel shows, and we'll talk about this even more. It's still. It's obviously WandaVision, Loki, and Moon Knight are still the top 3.
Yeah,
I think everybody can agree with that.
And but in that order too.
Oh yeah, and I genuinely think that this show is 4. I really do. I do think them 3 are higher and above.
You think it's 4?
I 100% think it's 4.
Dude, I'm putting this like barely above She-Hulk. That's
Really?
the second worst. Yeah.
Really? That's
I
wild.
hated, Miss Marvel, but I thought like it did what it was supposed to accomplish pretty well. Like, I'm not the demographic, but I thought it was all right.
Yeah, well, I still think Secret Invasion was all right. I think, just the elements that it had for what it had, I thought it was pretty good. But it just needed that better finale, and it needed some other stability. But we'll talk about that as we get into it. So we'll start off with the characters. We'll do this similar to what we do it on movie reviews. We'll do our characters, we'll go into pros, we'll go into cons, and then a little bit more until we get to our rating of the entire series as a whole. So let's get into our characters. Starting with number 1, Nick Fury.
Yeah.
What do we think? Samuel L. Jackson.
To be honest, it's not something we haven't seen before. It's very good, but I just feel like they didn't expand upon his character as they should have. Because I feel like I don't know, man. The whole mystery of Nick Fury is kind of the appeal to him. So seeing like some of this backstory with Priscilla / Var or whatever, it wasn't that appealing. As far as like his performance, I thought it was really good.
Yeah, I mean it's Samuel L.
know?
Jackson. I mean he's going to deliver. I agree. I didn't necessarily enjoy the subplot of his wife and that kind of thing, but we've known Nick Fury as a character for so long now. He was introduced in the very first Iron Man, the end credit scene,
Yeah.
and sure the mystery of him was obviously very appealing. But now that it's been this many amount of years later, you kind of want to know and dig deep into his character and who he is, what happened, how did he get to the points. They didn't deliver in the necessary ideas of him as a character and like what they should have done.
I agree.
But I enjoyed how they delivered some of the aspects. I enjoyed who he was, and I really liked the whole idea of the blip and exploring his experience with the blip and how he disappeared and then he disappeared again when he get back because he didn't know what to do with himself.
Yeah.
I loved that, and how he wasn't the
I did
same.
like that part, too.
And he wasn't the same Fury as he was prior to the blip. I loved that plot, and I think that was really cool, and the elements of him coming back and really having to deal with the whole idea of what he did to the Skrulls because he promised them a home. I loved that. I thought that was really good. I thought that made sense. I thought that fit with his character, and the whole serious conversations he was having was really appealing to me. So I think him as a whole was really good to this show.
Yeah.
You have anything?
That's about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's Samuel L. Jackson. Gotta
I
love Samuel L.
know.
Jackson.
I haven't seen really a bad performance. From Samuel L. Jackson.
No. And I do love how he really loves the character of Fury and how he's there for it. He's not there necessarily for a paycheck. He's there for the character, and I appreciate that with him. Next up, we're going to talk about a character that I feel like there's a lot of controversy and a lot of mixed opinions about. Now, to start off, I love this actress. I absolutely adore this actress.
Yeah.
But the character I was not a huge fan of, and that being Gaia. What do you think?
Absolute L character,
Yeah.
to be honest. We all know she has acting chops.
For
Game
sure.
of Thrones, everybody's seen it. But man, this character was just boring. It was just uninteresting. I found myself like wanting to skip almost every scene she was in. I feel like she was just kind of one dimensional. And I don't know if that's her fault or just a writing for her, but it was just off.
I mean, Emilia Clarke, she's incredible. I mean, we can't say enough about her. And I agree with everything you said. It was very one-dimensional. It was very not giving. I think what they should have done is they should have tossed the whole Gaia plot and made her Daisy Johnson Quake. I think that would have fit better. If they didn't use Chloe Bennett, which I would have loved to have seen Chloe Bennett here and come back. If they didn't use her, but had Emilia Clarke play that, because Quake does play a huge role in the Secret Invasion comics, I thought it would have fit really well.
And I think it would have made more sense for the future too, because I don't think necessarily we're going to see Gaia in the future. Like, I don't think there's going to be season 2, and I don't see where she fits.
I don't either.
Like you said, Bennett's character would have, transitioned well, as Quake. I don't see it, man.
Yeah, I know.
And her story with Talos, her dad,
It didn't
I
really
couldn't relate
add-
to it. Even
yeah.
if there was like some back scenes and backstory with it more, I wasn't interested.
I understand. All right, next up we got to talk about Gravik, the villain of the show, played by Kingsley Ben-Nadir. He was also in Barbie recently.
Yeah,
shout out.
so
there.
weird seeing those two. The duality of man.
It
they
is
call
really
it.
different. But in my opinion, Gravik, I thought he was one of the best parts of the show.
Yeah.
In my opinion,
Dude.
I think he's probably honestly the best Disney Plus villain we've seen. I really do. And there's not much competition, but
Wanda.
well, Wanda wasn't a villain in WandaVision though. Really, I mean, she was the protagonist.
technically,
so
but she was the one that caused.
she was the one that caused it, but she wasn't the villain, so I
Yeah.
can't count her.
I'm trying to think even who they have.
I mean, Agatha was
I know,
great.
Ethan Hawke's
but-
character was.
Ethan Hawke was really good.
I think he's probably my favorite.
But I really enjoyed Gravik in this show. I think he could have been easily main villain of the movie. I really genuinely do. He played the character well.
Performance was great.
Performance, I agree, was great. He was brutal. He killed, and
know.
he did it with ease, and he did it with blood, and I
He was
loved
dope.
it.
Yeah,
I thought that
But you
was
still
so cool.
understood where he was coming from too. Like, yes,
Absolutely.
he was very radical, but you could see the points he was
Yeah,
trying to make.
I mean, he
you
was
know?
obviously he was like, I need a home, and I need a home for my people. But then he was willing to kill his own people for his own cause.
I know.
I think that's such a cool plot. I think it was really good how they did Gravik in the show. I wish they would have changed how they became super soldiers, but I'll talk about that in the cons. But they're super soldiers, super scrolls. I think they should have gone with the Fantastic Four idea and had this come out after the movie. But we'll talk about that in the cons. But still, I really enjoyed him. I think he was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, and his story with Nick Fury, I think, worked really well. Like,
agree.
you got to see why he felt betrayed, and the basis for all his actions.
Yeah.
I liked him a lot.
Absolutely.
Shout
I
out.
did too. Shout out him. Next up, another, I think, highlight of the show. I don't know if you agree. We haven't talked about this at all. This was interesting, but I think Talos was a big highlight of the show. Ben Mendelsohn was awesome in every.
Dude, I haven't really seen him in anything,
in a
to be
whole lot,
honest.
but he was incredible as Talos.
Yeah.
His he was kind of that mediator. He was like talking about, he's like, you know what, I'm a scroll. I was their mentor. I was their leader.
Yeah.
I know where they're coming from, but yet I still care for this planet that took care of me for so many years. And working with Fury to try to stop Gravik, and then his spoilers, obviously, for this whole podcast, his tragic death scene was very well done.
It definitely goes down after that. Like you said, he was that necessary mediator, and it was cool because he had both sides. Both sides.
And
of the
I
coin.
do agree. Like the episode 4, after his death, and when that episode ended, I do think that's when the series took a turn for the worse. I think the first 4 episodes of that series were incredible, and I will defend
second
those. Absolutely,
was terrible.
You think the second episode was?
Yes,
I liked it.
It was boring.
Really,
Yeah.
I liked it. I think all the first 4 episodes were really, really good and well done. I think 5 and 6 were definitely the downfall, in my opinion. So, all right, next up, we got to talk about Nick Fury's wife that we were introduced in the show, Priscilla Vara. Is that correct?
Yeah, Priscilla and Vara, like human and squirrel name, I guess. She gave a great performance.
Oh, yeah. I agree.
I really do feel like they could have left this subplot out, as we've kind of already mentioned before. I didn't feel like it gave too much to Fury. Like I said, I don't know. I feel like there can still be mystery with him, but to find out he's married to the Skrull the whole time, I don't know. It doesn't really change anything.
I think they could have revealed that a little bit better. I think instead of instantly showing us that she was a Skrull, I think they should have just introduced us to his wife, had her be some type of espionage aspect, and then have the reveal that she was a Skrull this whole time later. I think that might have fit a little bit better.
twist to it.
I think that would have been a little bit better there. I do agree. Her performance was great.
Like, she's very good.
Like her character, I think, was pretty good in how they did her. But the whole relationship with her and Fury, I think. Actually, one of my favorite scenes in the show was when they were sitting at the table, not knowing whether they were going to kill each other.
Yeah, and
then
they had the guns.
And then I think that was one of my favorite scenes in the show. It was incredible. But other aspects, when she's interacting with other characters and stuff, didn't work as well.
It didn't fit. I feel like you could have cut out a lot of her parts.
Yeah, and they introduced her pretty late in the show.
I know.
For it to be, well, it's a short show, but it shouldn't have been as short as it was.
Yeah.
Clearly. All right, next up, we got to talk about. Also, I really liked him, but I didn't like how they did some of the things, and that being Rhodey, my guy Don Cheadle, and him being obviously in the show as Skrull for the entire time.
They make it way too obvious.
They do make it way too obvious. Not in the beginning, I don't think. Like at the very beginning, you're like, okay, he's Rhodey, but he's probably going to be a Skrull.
Yeah.
And then later, you're like, okay, he's clearly a Skrull.
Like, they just have him pushing this agenda so hard to start this war. You're like, come on, man. Rhodey would not do that.
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. And my curiosity is, how long has he been a Skrull? I mean, obviously, this was the biggest reveal of a Skrull. So how long has he been there? So I saw some theories that right after Civil War is when the transition happened. And that's too far for me. I think for his character, I think probably after Endgame would probably make the most sense.
I know, but that really does cheapen the character. It does, in my opinion, because I know that it was Rhodey in Civil War, and then he couldn't walk, but then he's walking later. Like that's the freaking Skrull right there. So that would Skrull him at the Tony's funeral and everything.
And that would be wild.
It cheapens him, man. Yeah, but as far as Don Cheadle, dude, Don Cheadle's great.
Oh yeah,
his performance
he did really
is awesome, and dude, Skrull him is just so funny.
Oh,
he's so buggy with it. I don't know, I liked him.
I liked it, and you could tell like the difference between the characters. Yeah, and he did a really good job showing that. Oh yeah, it does. But he did a really good job, and the whole Skrull part of it, the explanation was not as good, and I think it could have been a crazier reveal than they had it. I think if they would have showed when it happened, when he took out the real Rhodey, that would have been really cool.
I wonder,
and I would have appreciated that. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see there. All right, next up, a character that was very much a welcome to the show, and I think you're one of your favorites as well. That being the character Sonya Falsworth, played by Olivia Colman.
Dude,
I'll let you go with that.
Huge W, man. Olivia Colman has to be one of the most slept on actresses, man, because she's always doing like BBC stuff.
Yeah.
But dude, she was phenomenal. I really felt like she stole every single scene she was in.
Absolutely did.
And and she's in that the moral kind of gray area. She's like willing to kill, and she's fine with it, but she's
torture,
still torture. Yeah, but she's still looking out for the greater good of humanity.
Absolutely,
dude. I really felt like she was like one of the highlights of the show.
She was hilarious. I was laughing so many times. She was just like torturing people so casually and talking to them like they were her children.
I know.
It was crazy.
I know the quips she was throwing in. I was surprised. Like Disney was like going with that.
I know.
I'm like, okay, I appreciate that.
It too. But she was really a great ad. I don't really know what her her character really did for the show, other than just being there. Really, like it didn't really add anything.
She's definitely there, like to pull in an audience.
Yeah,
you know?
that's really
She's
it.
very
She didn't
beloved.
really like if they took her role out, it wouldn't change much
I
of the
know.
show.
Yeah.
But with that being said, she was welcome though. I enjoyed seeing her. She was really great on the screen. I
Yeah.
agree. Some scene at first I wasn't keen on her. I was like, oh, this character's kind of annoying. But as the
know.
series progressed,
You're like, okay,
she's
kind
kind
of
of cool.
She's just growing on you more and more.
Absolutely. But but it was definitely enjoyable to see her, and Olivia Colman shout out there.
Yeah, shut up, man.
All right, next up, a character that I thought was incredible. She was only in one episode, but in the episode she was in, she killed it, and that being Maria Hill, played by Kobe Smulders. I love Maria Hill. I love how they did it. I am devastated on how they killed her, though.
I hate the way it happened, man.
Yeah.
It did feel cheap too. Like the first episode, like I know
she's so huge of a character.
she's
like,
huge, yeah, and she's been around like what since Avengers,
since the first Avengers,
Since the
2012.
First Avengers.
Yeah.
So I know either they couldn't pay her, or she just wanted an exit.
But then again, Kobe Smulders has said time and time again she'd love to play Maria Hill as long as they let her. So I think it was the writer's decision to do this, which is also tragic to think about.
I can't get with that.
I mean, I appreciated that they were willing to go that far. I appreciate that, what I've been missing from Marvel, and it's been lacking since I think Endgame really, is just killing off characters. This was one of my main, well, that sounds horrible, but that was one of my main quarrels actually with Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Great movie, but it should have killed off a character.
I know.
Just because it would have had a more of an emotional impact.
And it adds the stakes.
It does. It adds stakes.
You're like,
adds
oh
more-
crap, anybody can die now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the fact that it's not been killing anybody off and it's just been kind of saving everybody around, it's like, it just feels like it's not as good as it should be.
Yeah.
And when they did kill off Maria Hill as big as a character, I was in shock. I think she should have died a better way. However, the fact that they were willing to have a cold open like that speaks volumes to me on how this show was going to be, and gave the vibe of the rest of the show.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that vibe, and I appreciated that dark tone and what it established. I was just devastated in the fact of how she died,
how it
and,
happened,
and that she did die. So that was tragic.
It
But
hurts.
I still enjoyed her in this role, and I think
Yeah,
she was great.
in that first episode.
And the fact that, one of my favorite scenes as well, when she's talking to Nick Fury in that bar, and she's just like, you left and you're not the same as you were. And I don't know if I can trust you, and all that kind of conversation.
I don't know. You're not a squirrel.
It wasn't like that bad, but I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate Maria
She was
Hill.
great,
So
really.
Shout out Maria Hill.
Shout
you will
out
be
Maria.
missed from the MCU.
I know.
Next up, really, really brief, was only in like the first 5 minutes of the first episode, and then the last 5 minutes of the last episode, and that being Agent Everett Ross, played by Martin Freeman.
Martin Freeman.
Love
Love that dude, man.
But my question is, was he a Skrull and flipping Wakanda forever?
I know. Or even like in the first.
I know.
You
Like,
know?
I don't think he was in the first.
When did that happen?
But he had to have been Wakanda forever, right? Because that just happened,
I guess. But like, who says it can't go back that far? Like, that happened after Civil War.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Whereas
Right.
when Rhodey got taken over, I don't know, dude.
I don't know, but that's just brutal to think about.
For sure, at least Wakanda Forever.
At least Wakanda Forever. It had to have been, but then again, he acted like he would.
Yeah, but then I don't know, dude.
But they had
Like,
their memories.
He was the exact same, but like there's no agenda to push though in the second one. Like he didn't do anything out of character for him.
Yeah, and you know what I just thought of? That was absolute miss of opportunity.
What?
That kind of makes me mad. They didn't make Sharon Carter a Skrull, and they should have.
Because she wasn't even in the show.
She wasn't in the show at all. But in Falcon and Winter Soldier, she was so off character.
She's so weird,
and
dude.
she like seems such like a Skrull. They should have made her one.
I know.
It would have made so much sense.
Like, I feel like this is really all we're gonna see of the Skrulls, to be honest, in Marvel.
That would be
so.
tragic.
Why wouldn't you put her in there?
Exactly. I mean, I know she's going to be in Armor Wars, and she's going to have to deal with that. But if she's not a Skrull, then what's her agenda?
Why was she doing
Who
that?
is she?
You know,
what's
who's she
going
working
on
for?
here? So we'll have to see. And I am excited for Armor Wars and to see how Rhodey's reaction to having been a Skrull for so long now.
Yeah.
And we'll find more of that out in Armor Wars. I am excited for that, and it being a movie now also gets me excited. So yeah. All right, now it's time to get into our pros and cons of the series. You want to start us off with the pros?
Yeah. So I don't have too much of either, really. They're pretty condensed. Pros, first thing I'm gonna go with is the casting choice for the whole show. Besides, well, not even like Emilia Clarke. Like, she's great. I just feel like everybody they got really killed their role, respectively.
Yeah,
especially I think Coleman and then Kingsley were my two standouts. But I mean, they just had heavy hitter after heavy hitter.
Absolutely.
And I feel like they really delivered, even though sometimes the plot and the dialogue didn't necessarily, come
Match
up
up
to
there.
their level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm gonna go with that.
I agree with that. Next up for pro, this is actually an interesting pro, but the genre of drama that this show had, the dramatic aspects. Most successful shows are dramas, and this show, yes, it was action sci-fi, but the drama of the show and the talking and of like the between the two characters of like Nick Fury and his wife, or Nick Fury and Talos, or whatever else, those kind of stuff, Maria Hill and Nick Fury, that was just great. And the whole digging deep into that, and the whole what have you done, why is it like this, and the whole bringing you down because of those things, I enjoyed. And I think it definitely brought a lot of the show up for me, in my opinion.
Another one of my pros, I think, just the darker approach. Like you said, that kind of pairs along with that. But just as far as the violence, the gore, some of the language, it just felt more natural.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it's cool, like seeing blood, and that's a weird thing to say, but like it's just realistic. So watching that, I truly felt like that this could have happened.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Thank you.
I had that as a pro as well. The darkness and the gore of it. I was surprised at how gory some of the scenes were. Like it shows stuff and stuff that's never been shown in the MCU, and I was surprised they were willing to go that far.
Like, okay.
And it makes me happy for the future that they were willing to go that far. And I just think the seriousness as well is also a pro of mine. I think the fact that it does, even though it didn't have the same level of plot and same level of dialogue as like Winter Soldier, it had serious levels like Winter Soldier and the seriousness of it. Minus, of course, Olivia Colman's character, but that was okay because it fit well. I enjoyed that. I think, me and you both missed that from the MCU as of late, and I think this was a welcome tone of that being back, and I appreciated that. That's my next pro.
That's
you don't have any
dude,
more?
I'm out of pros.
Okay, next up for another pro, I have the villain. Obviously, I highlighted him. I highlighted Gravik. I think he was incredible.
Yeah.
I think that everything they did with him was great. Also, the acting, we already talked about this, was top notch.
Phenomenal.
I mean, he had a great cast. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson, Olivia Colman, Kobe Smulders, Kingsley Belair, Emilia Clarke. Like, that's an amazing cast.
Yeah.
Then also the action. I think the action was really good, and along with that, I think the CGI was actually pretty good in the show.
Yeah.
I don't think
it better be. They put $200 million into
and
it.
it was whatever they did with the action and CGI was really successful, and I really think that drove me in. And that concludes my pros.
Okay. I guess I'll start with the cons.
Go for it.
My first con, I'm going to go with pacing. So first of all, I think it's pretty clear that this 6-episode format does not work.
No.
Just looking at the run times, I was just kind of mad. Like, just going in, you had your first 2 episodes were an hour, an hour rather. Then your third one was about 45. Then like the last
They kept
the last
going
3 they
down.
kept going down. With the
Why?
finale was like 35.
Yeah.
I think that should be kind of flip flopped, or hour on one end, hour on the other end, and then the rest are consistent. But I feel like it started off really slow, and then it just got way too fast at the end. Like, it really seemed like it accelerated way too fast. Like we said, that always happens with these 6-episode shows. I'm not surprised it happened. I could have told you that was going to happen. But man, the pacing was just way off.
I know. I think 8 to 10 episodes would be a much better
That would
format
have worked.
for
Like,
any of them.
WandaVision
was 9,
yeah,
and She-Hulk
and
was
that
9
worked.
too, but that didn't work. It was just bad.
That just
But-
L after L.
Like, if you're gonna make episodes, also be consistent with your run times. Like, if it's anywhere from 45 to 55, that's perfectly fine. But if I'm getting 37s, 38s, 55s, 42s, and all of these other things, that doesn't make any sense, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's a TV show. Make it consistent. I mean, it's obviously episodes should be consistent. And I still don't understand, like, this goes for everything television, prior to the acting and writing strike. I don't understand how, back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, the shows we used to watch used to come out every year, season to season, 20 to 25 episodes. That's how it was.
Yeah.
Every year. And then they'd come out every year, and
they're
they'd be good
always
shows.
like 25 to 30 minutes,
And- Well, no, they'd be hour episodes.
Well, the dramas, the
they'd be
dramas like
45, but they'd
Sopranos
still-
and Breaking Bad.
Oh, yeah, they'd come out year
They'd
to
be
year.
like 55
and
to an hour.
They'd crank them out, and they would be good.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, then we go over to streaming, and every single show in streaming, and this goes for Netflix, Stranger Things, Outer Banks, and then Disney with Loki's and WandaVisions and all this stuff. It takes them forever to crank out 6 to 8 episodes or 10 episodes.
And it's always rushed, and the end product is not what it should be.
It doesn't make sense. Like, if they're rushed, they're taking forever. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
you know?
Bro, like the first episode is almost twice as long as the finale.
I know it.
It's like an
doesn't make
hour
sense.
versus like 30.
Like, show me
36 minutes.
consistency with your
know?
product. You know what I'm saying?
agree.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right. For my first con, I have the finale in general. The finale
I had that one too.
was just not that good. I mean, obviously the fight was cool. But did it make sense? Not at all.
Yeah.
Like, it was stupid. Like, I loved to see the action. I was like, yeah, that's pretty neat. Seeing all, like, pointing out what superhero power that is. I was into that.
Yeah.
But I hated how it was executed and how, I like the idea of Gaia pretending to be Fury and then, having that confrontation with Gravik. I think that was okay.
Dude, everyone saw that coming. Though, I feel like
I didn't.
really?
I didn't. I mean, I thought I knew it wasn't Fury there.
Yeah.
But I wasn't thinking about Gaia at that point. But I think that was a cool idea. But I didn't like the way that they did the Super Scroll. That it was a super scroll, and that how Gaia is now the most powerful MCU character. It makes zero sense.
I know.
Out of just like you're nerfing everybody else. It's like, are you kidding me? How are they going to nerf Gaia now? They have to do something.
I really don't want to see her.
Like
again.
Wanda's the only one that's going to just like, you don't have any powers anymore. Come on, Wanda, do it. And I don't know. It just, the whole thing, it should have, if they were going to do it as a show, which it should have been a movie like we talked about, and I had that as a con as well, should have been a movie, should have been a bigger plot in the MCU as well. It should have come out after Fantastic Four, and they should have had Gravik adopt the powers of the Fantastic Four like in the comics. It makes more sense.
Yeah.
It limits him to just 4 powers. And instead of having this harvest that gives everybody all the abilities of the Avengers, which is just stupid to me in my head.
I think it's really dumb, and I don't think you'd ever really see a situation like that.
No.
I have to say, I didn't enjoy any part of that fight. Even the action bits. I don't know. To me, it felt so cheap. Like every time they would switch a power, I felt like they were just flaunting it just specifically for the show. Like if it was truly a fight, I feel like you would just instantly become Carol Danvers' power because she's the most powerful. But then they start off really small and then get really big, and they keep on flexing this with all CGI, and it just feels like that part was forced, you know? And like the fight. Dude, it's everything with the finale of She-Hulk made fun of. Like, She-Hulk was an absolute piece of garbage. But the end finale, like, they're making a good point. Like, hey, this always short episode, moves fast, and then good guy versus bad guy, epic fight in the end. That's exactly what happened in this show. Like, it's everything they swore they would not do again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's how it felt.
I completely agree. I mean, yes, it was cool to see all this stuff, but at the same time, I think as of late, the MCU, not everything, but several projects have really cheapened what the MCU was before. I think back to Loki whenever the Infinity Stones were on the desk as tabletops. I think that cheapened a lot.
Yeah.
I think also the multiverse cheapens a lot as well. Not completely, because there is some multiverse plots that I enjoy.
They're
like
really good, but they're using that as an excuse for everything
as an excuse now,
you know?
And all of this other stuff. And now we get the Super Scrolls able to just use all of the powers, and it cheapens all the other superheroes that we've seen before. And I just don't appreciate that. I just think that don't cheapen your fiction, make it better storytelling than what you did before, because this just wasn't done right.
I don't feel like it's that hard to create like creative, unique storylines for superheroes.
Right.
Like, try something that hasn't been done.
Yeah. And another con that I have is it just doesn't make sense with the plot of the entire MCU. I mean, this whole scroll idea is cool. The whole concept is great, but they didn't execute it properly, and it didn't make sense that Nick Fury was coming to Earth in the middle of, whatever year it was after Infinity War and this happening. If the Skrulls have been doing this for a while, where they've been, where's this, where's that? And it just didn't make sense. It felt like it was just like a standalone thing trying to be part of the MCU. And I just did not gravitate towards that.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'll add on to that. I felt like the writing / the subplots really suffered. Like you said, it didn't really feel connected, and it was supposed to. It's been a while since, the first Captain Marvel, and I feel like this show didn't do a good enough job connecting it back to that. Even with all the backstories and everything, to be honest, like I forgot like most of what happened, and I didn't feel like it did a good job connecting. Then you add that right upon, okay, they already assume all the stuff going in, and they just run with it in the beginning. It just, it didn't make a lot of sense. And then I think when you consider like specifically the 2 subplots of Guy with her father and then Priscilla with Nick Fury, like we've talked about before, it felt forced. I didn't feel like it added too much, so it's kind of taken away from this grand big scheme of thing that's happening. The writing wasn't there.
Yeah, and I mean, I just thought of this now, and I think this series might have worked better. Now, I wouldn't have liked this approach, but I think for what they did, it would have worked better if essentially they had it take place before the Avengers were even around. Before 2008 Iron Man.
Yeah.
I think if they would have had it in that timeline of like early 2000s, like he promised him back in 93 or whatever that he would do this, and then now it's 2003, it's been 10 years, he hasn't done anything, so now we're doing this infiltration.
Yeah.
I think that would have worked better. That way the Avengers are out of the picture, there's no like really superhero powered beings, all the aliens haven't come here yet. There isn't any of this stuff going on as of right now. So you have Fury, who's doing these things and executing these things, and then brought in like Coulson and had him around, and then had do some type of plot there.
That'd have been epic.
I think that would have been better.
Yeah,
and I still agree that it should have been a movie in the Avengers. Now I think that would have been the best move possible. But if they were going to do what they did here at Secret Invasion, I think they should have gone that route. Yeah, in my opinion.
I agree.
But all right, do you have any more cons?
That's all my cons.
That's it for me as well. So now let's just get into what Secret Invasion should be, right? The comic discussion of what Secret Invasion should be. So in the comics, they infiltrate the Avengers.
Yeah.
And that was what I was missing. I wanted that.
I know,
right?
dude.
You had the crazy reveal in the comics, like that Elektra was a Skrull and that Spider-Woman was a Skrull, and everybody's like, are you who's what? And Nick Fury also, he's at the helm of this, he's helping out, but the Avengers are involved too. They're like pointing fingers at each other. They can't trust each other. They're having these these threats that are going across each other and fighting over not knowing who each other is.
And that's where the suspense comes from.
Right.
You have these really high figures, like not knowing who can trust. How long's it's been? Whereas in the show, it's like you don't have any of those characters.
Right.
So it's just a guessing game between like world officials.
Absolutely.
It's cool.
And then plus, like, when these Skrulls were infiltrating the Avengers, they were tearing the Avengers apart. And this led to some incarnations of civil war and all these things because everybody was not agreeing because they didn't know who was who. And that was just really incredible, and I was missing that.
And it's tearing apart that team of superheroes, whereas versus trying to start a world war.
I think that the best incarnation of Secret Invasion besides the comic is Avengers Earth Mighty Superheroes.
Dude, I was about to say
the
that.
Show.
And it's only like
2.
4 or 5, 6 episodes. Like it's pretty short for the
it
whole
is,
season.
but it's a good chunk of season 2. But they did it so effortlessly.
I know, man.
Like they had Captain America.
Did you find out Captain America was
and
the Skrulls?
that
crazy?
was crazy.
Yeah.
And then him having to get out of being captured and come back and do all these
Black
things, and then
Panther
thinking
and all
he's
the
dead,
homies.
and all these other characters, and just Captain America absolutely destroying the Avengers from within, and all of these different things, and then like Hawkeye going after Iron Man, like you're a Skrull,
and then
they're
Tony
not.
suspecting everybody and kind of
Right,
isolating
and he
himself.
leaves the Avengers and has to come back together. It was just so well done.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they should have got their inspiration
It was
from.
Avenger focus. Just focus on the superheroes, not Fury.
Absolutely. But Fury was still involved.
Politicians,
He still was huge in this episode series. He had this. He was a part of the Resistance. He had Quake, and he had these other characters that would come in, and Hill, and they would go after these Skrulls, and they knew they could trust each other, and they told the Avengers that and how to do it, and it was just so well done. And this is what it should have been in the MCU.
I know,
in my opinion.
But that budget would have been huge.
It would have been
like
huge.
you said, that's a 2.5, 3 hour movie right there.
But it would have been necessary. I think this story is big enough for that.
And it, honestly, like you said, it should have happened way before. Like honestly, in the scheme of things, it could have happened like after the first Avengers movie.
Absolutely.
Instead of Ultron. I don't know. I mean, it's too late to look back on what could have been.
I know,
but it would have fit well there.
It's unfortunate there. All right, so now it's time for our rating on a scale from 1 through 10. Nathan, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm trying to think what shows this is better than. In my opinion, I do think obviously anything's better than She-Hulk.
Oh yeah.
Hawkeye, I didn't enjoy Hawkeye. I feel like honestly it's on the same level as like a Hawkeye. Like you have some interesting characters, but the pacing's weird and the plot is weird, and then the finale sucks. Like that's essentially what Hawkeye was. I'm gonna say it's probably tied with Hawkeye for like the second worst. I do think Miss Marvel's better, and everything else was a little better. As a whole, and obviously I like to judge pretty harshly because nothing is perfect. I'm gonna go with a 5 out of 10 for this one.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, with me, again, I have a lot of bias because I love the story of Secret Invasion. But then again, I did do an average of like episodes, and obviously when I averaged and rated each episode 1 through 10, 1 through 4 were definitely higher than 5 and 6.
1 through 4 were like 6 to 8.
Oh yeah,
high eights.
absolutely. And because of that average, the average that I got is a 7 out of 10. And it's still it's lower. I mean, obviously, I still do think it's the fourth best. But that's not saying a lot because out of the Disney Plus shows, they're not that great, to be honest, except for outside of WandaVision, Loki, and Moon Knight are the only exceptions, in my opinion, of
Yeah.
great. Of really
I think
good shows.
WandaVision is on a tier by itself, and then slightly below it, and then I think Moon Knight is a couple steps below Loki.
Yeah, I completely agree. But like just I think out of the others, like you agree, WandaVision's way up here, and then the other two, and then the rest are down here.
Yeah.
That's how it was, but
pretty
I still
clear.
think Secret Invasion is 4, just because the first 4 episodes killed it. I think they were great. I love the drama. I love the darkness. I love the gore. And then it took a turn for the worse. So that's my opinion.
Yeah,
So
shout out Ben Mendelsohn
out
for
of
dying.
I know. Out of an average 7 out of 10.
Okay, so what? That rounds up to about a 6.
It's about a 6.
5, yeah.
Well,
that's-
6.5, 6.2, 3.
no.
something like
If you add 7,
7
and
and
5 to
Yeah, you
12,
get a
and
6.
divide by 2, you get 6.
that. You get 6. So it's about a 6 out of 10.
That's college right there, baby.
Yeah.
All right, guys, if you enjoyed this episode, let us know by giving us a review and a download. Our podcast, Heroes in the Moment, is available on all major podcast platforms. So check it out. If you want to stay up to date with all of our new episodes, news, announcements, check out the Instagram at Heroes in the Moment.
And we just want to thank you all for listening. And as always, we love you 3000.